Welcome. I'm your host Nicholas Cortez. Last week on World War Weekly, we covered the ongoing submarine crisis, as well as the raging battle that is Verdun, and the beginning of an Irish revolt against British rule that would come to an end in oncoming weeks. This week on World War Weekly, the number of casualties continues to soar as an everlasting empire begins to crumble. All the ruckus of this week was initiated when on May 5, 1916, an Arab revolt was officially launched on the Ottoman Empire by the Emir of Mecca, also known as the King of the Arabs, Sharif Hussein bin Ali. Many Arabs thought that this revolt was long overdue, so when Sharif Hussein bin Ali told the Arab community that the time had come, all hell broke loose. The Arabian mindset was boiling with nationalism, and it had been for years, due to Arabs simply wanting to rule themselves, instead of having to follow the rule of Turkish officials like Fakhri Pasha. The Arab revolt was not the first thing to go wrong with the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire had been in decline for years, and it didn't look as if it was going to bounce back from its downfall. The Turks were almost unaware of the amount of men that they had lost. In the Battle of Gallipoli alone, the Turks had lost 85,000 men in the field. The Arabs knew that the time to detach themselves from the Turks was now, because if they didn't revolt immediately, they might not get another chance. Sharif Hussein bin Ali would go on to send troops to attack the Ottoman garrison in weeks to come. Ali's plan was the first military action that was made from this rebellion, and would cause terrible consequences for the Arabs in the Ottoman Empire. While conflicts were arising in the Ottoman Empire, the same was happening back in the United States. On May 5, 1916, Gottlieb von Jagow, the foreign minister of Germany, had sent a note to the United States in response to the previous note sent to Germany on April 20th from the United States, which included demands that Germany had to agree to regarding submarine warfare. Jagow's note was sent to Ambassador Gerard, who was the U.S. ambassador to Germany at the time. In Jagow's note, Germany would agree to American demands, but within the note were the concerns of the Germans, and what it was Germany needed cleared up before unrestricted German submarine warfare was suspended. Jagow needed the Americans to make sure that the ship sunk by a German U-boat was positively identified as the Sussex, and not one that was identical to it. It was written in the note that, quote, "The German government is alive to the possibility that the ship mentioned in the note on April 10th as having been torpedoed by the German submarine is actually identical to the Sussex. The German government begs to reserve further communication on the matter until certain points are ascertained." While the Germans were acting with uncertainty when it came to admitting their mistakes, they always knew that they had done something wrong. It was clearly stated in a note responding to the April 20th note sent to Germany that the intentions of German naval ships was to, quote, "conduct warfare against the enemy trade carried on enemy freight ships encountered within the war zone surrounding Great Britain." So all along the coast of Britain were German submarines lurking under waters, waiting for a ship to cross its path. Germany had been torpedoing ships because of the naval blockade that was put up to restrict the abilities of the German Navy. Well, certainly British naval tactics were effective because desperate German officials asked U.S. President Woodrow Wilson in one of their notes to him that week to talk to Britain about taking down the naval blockade. On May 8th, President Woodrow Wilson sent a note in response to Germany's appeal on persuading Britain to abandon their naval blockade. In the note, Wilson directly addresses Ambassador Jagow, telling him that the United States would not be able to help Germany in getting Britain to take down their naval blockade because the U.S. was restricted, quote, "by motives of friendship in its patient efforts to bring an amicable settlement to the critical questions from that policy," end quote. German officials were not very pleased to hear the news, and Wilson expected this. Wilson then threatened to break off relations with Germany and join the war on its ally side if Germany were to continue with its unrestricted submarine warfare campaign. Germany, already having enough problems, decided that on May 10th it would suspend its campaign of unrestricted submarine warfare to prevent the US from joining this war, which would have most likely just ended up causing more problems for Germany. While Britain was immutable when it came to negotiating matters related to naval blockades, British military troops were not so advanced when it came to matters on the battlefield. With Germany being one of the biggest troublemakers throughout the war, it was no surprise to see German soldiers were ordered to raid the 20th Battalion along the French border. The 20th Battalion was an Australian infantry unit that were supporting British forces located in trenches along the French border at the time of the attack. The battalion was attacked following an artillery barrage, which resulted in over 200 casualties for the Australians. Keep in mind that the 20th Battalion had a man count of about 800 men, which means that Germany killed about 25% of that unit. Although those numbers seem small in relation to other casualties, Britain knew that it had to act quickly, or Germany would go unpunished for this ruthless action. Britain was not going to allow Germany to occupy British trenches on the French borders. So on May 8th, the Anzacs were called to the French border. Anzac stands for Australian and New Zealand Army Corps. And although the Anzacs were a relatively new army unit, they were a force to be reckoned with. The Anzacs first helped Britain fight the Turks off in the Battle of Gallipoli, and would now get the chance to avenge their fallen brothers. Since both New Zealand and Australia were British colonies, they would fight alongside the British soldiers to help push Germans out of the Western Front. At the end of the week, there were about 100 dead and plenty more were to be captured that week. This fight on the Western Front was more active than ever and didn't show any signs of slowing down. As a matter of fact, the Battle of Verdun on the Western Front grew more intense this week as the French recorded 89,000 dead and the Germans recorded 82,000 dead at the end of the week. On May 5th, Germany decided to make its pursuit for a French watchtower known as Hill 304. And although Germany wouldn't successfully take the hill over this week, the tower would be theirs in weeks to come. That was just what was happening on the land. Now let's take a look at what happened this week on the waters and in the air. A Zeppelin, a rigid German airship used for raids, was taken down this week by Allied warships at Salonika, which were just another thing for Germany to worry about this week. But Germany also did some damage on the ocean this week by showing the SS Cimrik the fastest way to the bottom of the ocean, as it was torpedoed on May 8th in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. This week was full of battles, rebellions, and negotiations, and we will continue to see the same for weeks to come. If you want to see what happens next week when we cover the Battle of Asiago, Sykes-Picot, and the attack on Fort Vaux, please make sure to come back next Thursday, and thank you for watching World War Weekly.